Thank you for joining us on Twitter Spaces this Tuesday evening for a really exciting discussion around AI and its use cases. In the past 3 or 4 years, AI has become a major topic of conversation among just professional circles and just in the general public space on its impact and all. So it's important to have a bit of an understanding of how AI generally works. To discuss this topic with me today, I have a friend and expert, Katarina Mpofu. The major topic today is decoding AI bias and why it favors the US and specifically what developing markets can do to make sure that they get their voice heard, so to speak. So without further ado, I would want to introduce the speaker. Katarina, maybe you can just introduce yourself briefly and tell us a bit about what you do as an AI expert.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Eric, for having me. I'm Katarina. I'm originally from Slovakia. I currently live in Sweden. I studied applied mathematics, first in Czech Republic and then at the University of Oxford. And I proceeded to work within data analytics and AI for the past 7 years. And currently I work for a company called Stupid Human, based in Stockholm. And what we do, we help other companies to use AI for their advantage. So we usually meet our clients, we discuss their workflow, their processes, and we see what we can do with AI to make their work better and more efficient.
You've skipped over a lot of content there, so I want to break it down a bit. So one, I think your mathematics background. So you can tell us a bit about your journey towards being interested in mathematics. You also have quite a deep interest in the past, at least has to do with chess, which is also a bit of mathematical thinking. So you can tell us a bit about that and how you got interested in both topics.
I always liked mathematics and I always liked logical thinking growing up. I'm very bad with any physical sports, really. Whoever knows me knows I'm really clumsy person. So in any free time activity, all usual sports were out of the question. And so I started playing chess when I was maybe 10, 12 years old. And I soon became like the highest ranked girl within my geographical region, which is Central Europe. I've been playing world championships, European championships, and similar competitions throughout my high school mostly. I just really enjoyed the logical thinking, like the seeing what is the opponent going to do, thinking the moves ahead. These kind of things were really interesting.
I've not tried chess. I've tried the baby of chess, the one called checkers, and I know it's quite difficult. When you're at chess, what are some of like the strategies that you use perhaps to get over your opponent? What are some of the things that you learned from the chess board so far yourself?
In general, it's really considering what your opponent is going to do and what it means for you. And you either want to stop it or you want to do something else that is even better than what they are doing. So you have to decide, do I want to prevent them from what they want to do? Do I want to go some other route that will be much better than what they are trying to do?
So it's a lot of game theory, so to speak. Even after you've prepared, there's also preparing against a person who can also change their strategy at any given time. So perhaps that's also a key lesson in the process, right?
Yes, and I also think one of the good lessons from chess is that usually when your opponents play something, you have a urge or impulse to react to it. And so you have to learn how to step back, look at the whole situation, and think a little bit before you do anything. So that's also a good lesson, I would say.
You've moved a bit away from chess and more into applied mathematics. And how was that journey? And how did you get to Oxford?
That's a good question. So actually after chess, I had another unusual hobby. So I was doing betting for a living in a sense. So I was looking for bookmakers' mistakes and trying to see where you can find any errors people made in estimating probabilities and chances that you can use to your advantage. So when I went to university, I was clearly set on mathematics as my main topic because that was always my interest and that what was I good at. And so I started studying in Czech Republic, where I studied mathematics applied in finance for 3 years. I did 1 year exchange program in Sweden where I met Eric Mukaya. So that's how we know each other. And afterwards, after first 2 years of bachelor's, I was getting straight A's through all my mathematics, statistics subjects. And I was thinking what to do, what bigger challenge to find.
You were getting straight A's. Some of us were struggling a lot with mathematics. That's quite an accomplishment.
We are all good in different subjects. So if you saw my grades from financial part of my degree, you would cry. But then I was seeking a bigger challenge, and I somehow felt like Oxford was the right place for me. I actually applied for both Oxford and Cambridge, and I got into both. But then in Oxford, I studied mathematical modeling and scientific computing. So I felt like it was very applied. It was really how to use mathematics in the real world. And there was some IT in it. So I already could take some AI courses, both in my bachelor's and in my master's at Oxford. And so that's what I really liked. So that's why I went into Oxford, got some scholarships, and that was.
There's something I wanted to circle back a bit because you were betting against the kind of the betting odds. You're checking out the betting odds and seeing where they are, and there are mathematical mistakes, and then being able to bet against them. Could you say something about the normal person trying to maybe beat the house in a betting session? Can they succeed from your experience, at least?
No, they can't. It's actually not only experience at my projects at university. I have done also some analysis of the betting odds versus the probabilities. And basically, the betting houses calculate the probabilities pretty well in most cases, which means that it doesn't matter what you bet for, you are actually going to lose in the long term. So it can happen that if you bet once, you win. If you bet twice, you might still win. But if you keep on betting without looking at the probabilities, you are almost guaranteed to lose. So I would not recommend it personally.
I'm speaking about this because we come from Kenya. Most Kenyans, at least, are addicted to betting. So what can you tell the average person, once again, like in terms of betting and how addictive it can be? And of course, the house is always winning. What can they do in that regard? What should they know when they engage in betting generally?
I would say just don't start with it. Once you start, it's very hard to stop. And stay away. And if you don't have the mathematical knowledge to calculate the probabilities and the chances of different results, different outcomes of a game, just don't do it. It doesn't matter if Barcelona is playing any team that you've never heard of and you think like they're guaranteed to win. The betting company knows that. And they've already done the math and they know, what they can afford to pay you out. And just don't even start. You can't outsmart them really. Or you can, but you need to be really good in what you're doing. So if you don't trust your mathematical and statistical skills enough, just don't do it.
Most people think behind the betting houses are just some down fellas. They can easily game. So I think what you're saying is that they're very smart people and with statistical and mathematical and AI behind it. Those are the people that you're playing against.
I was going to say like very smart people with a lot of computing power.
So they calculate a lot of probabilities and probably just whatever it is you're going to do, they've already thought about it in a way.
Exactly. And they have very good and very sophisticated models that are playing against you.
Speaking of models, your master's thesis was on modeling. I'm taking a bit of a winded road to getting to the final discussion around AI because it's an important journey. Your master's thesis was about cancer, modeling cancer development. Could you speak a little bit about it and what you learned in that process before we go on?
Yes, you're right. So what I was doing, I was modeling the initial stages of growth of cancer tumor. And my supervisor was one of the best experts on this topic in the world. So I found it really amazing because we also had a cancer research lab, like biological lab at Oxford. And so the departments would cooperate and we would know how the tumors look at each stage. And so we were making sure that our mathematical models were mimicking the real world, like how it looks in the real world. And our outcomes was matching what we were actually seeing in the biological labs. So that was pretty cool. But what I've learned there and what I always found amazing in mathematics was that it doesn't really matter what topic you apply it in. The models look very similar. So the model I was using to model the growth of cancer tumor can be used for stock prices or heat distribution or a lot of other topics in the world. It was like the application doesn't really matter. The model will look very similar regardless.
And from cancer, you've journeyed through finance. You did a bit of modeling and at least of risks in credits at Intrum, which is more of a company that does debt collection, so to speak. What is your role there and what did you learn in terms of modeling debts?
Yes, so as you said, Intrum is a debt collector, and I was working with the risk department. So our task was to see how much risk we have accumulated in different parts of the portfolio, different geographical location, estimate how the risk is going to develop in the future, similar things. And it was very interesting again to see how these things projected. When you're at school, it's so theoretical and it is just the numbers. But now you see how it's projecting in the real world and you see how it actually mimics the reality. So that I really like. And I'm sorry, I forgot the question already.
Generally, though, people don't think about, like, when you look at debt and people taking debt, there could be patterns there. We've had discussions with you about some countries where risk was higher than others and the developments that you're seeing there through the data. You're not a finance person, but just looking at the data, you can see some of the processes that how risk is evolving in one market different from the other and how that becomes an input in the decision making process for the company. So I just wanted to maybe just give a bit of thoughts on how you're able to bring a mathematical model into basically a decision about debt, whether to invest in it or not.
Yes, I actually remember this thing. We discussed it together. So my company looked at different macroeconomical variables, things like unemployment, inflation, and we wanted to see what has the highest impact on the rate of unpaid debt in each country. And in general, we noticed that the variable that was impacting it the most was the national debt the country had. So basically, the more the government was borrowing, the more people were borrowing also. Or maybe the other way around. The more people were willing to borrow and go into debt. The same behavior we saw from the government. One of the things I was doing was that we were buying like portfolios of unpaid debt. And then the level of debt of the government in the country was really affecting how much we were willing to pay in each country for the same package of unpaid debt. Because we know that if the government is borrowing a lot, it means that the people are borrowing a lot and they are much less likely to pay us. So then we are less willing to pay for it because we are going to get less money back.
A superb takeaway in terms of, I hadn't thought about it, that maybe perhaps one of the reasons why Kenyans borrow more could be that the government borrows more and we are actually mimicking the government, so to speak, in terms of our private borrowing. So I think that's a very good insight there. Now, I want to jump over to your present role and discussion and discuss a bit about AI and all. How long have you been interested in AI yourself, and how has your journey been in terms of coming to become an AI expert at a company called Stupid Human? I should say I've gotten a lot of comments on the name of the company, so perhaps you can also tell us a bit about what the name refers to.
I will start there. I think you would have to ask the co-founders how they came up with this name. But I think the idea is that AI is very intelligent and can do a lot of things. And it's very smart, but you still need some input from a stupid human and like the playfulness and the creativity that you bring, even if you are not the smartest compared to the AI. And I think that's what the name is supposed to mean.
I thought it meant AI is like a stupid human. So it seems that the stupid human actually needs to feed into the AI process. But then one of the common questions you get is AI is going to replace all of us. Is that something that worries your front line on this field? Do you think AI is going to replace humans completely?
No, definitely not. And I feel this kind of worry that something is going to replace people has been there multiple times in the past. I don't know, the engine was developed and suddenly people are worrying because you don't need 10 farmers, you need 2 using a tractor or something. You had the same when computers evolved and suddenly you don't need to do things manually. You are much faster in your computation and you maybe don't need as many accountants or people calculating things. But I think as we've seen it in the past, the same thing is going to happen, that some positions won't be needed anymore, but people will just refocus and requalify to something else. So new positions will evolve and they will replace the previous ones. So no, I'm not afraid of AI replacing us completely.
And how do you leverage AI perhaps in your day-to-day role before we discuss your research on AI? How has it improved and how can you recommend to people to use AI in their daily lives?
I think it helps a lot in the sense that it can replace a lot of manual things you were doing, but you still need to know what you are looking for. For instance, if I'm writing a code, I write a lot of code in Python. Before I would need to do something, I would go and Google and search through different forums and see what kind of code I can use. But now I ask ChatGPT, and instead of searching for an hour, I search for 2 minutes. I do it not only in my role, I also do it at home. So I have tomatoes, carrot, and onion in my fridge, and I ask ChatGPT, man, what can I cook with this? So instead of going through my cookbooks and looking for a recipe, I just ask GPT and it gives me some response within minutes.
And what are the common tools that you can advise maybe the average person to maybe look out for, apart from ChatGPT, which is very commonly used? What are some of the other tools that people should be looking out for? I know you have a list of them. You can give just 5.
My tools are very connected to my work. So things for interpreting code, things for generating images or videos.
But what are some of the tools that you use? Just give us top of mind, perhaps as the average person can get a bit of flavor on some of the tools that you use.
Yes, of course, I use things to check my grammar and my spelling because I am an Eastern European and our English is not known to be the best in the world. So I always do grammar checks. I generate images, I generate videos. I have things help me to generate codes.
Could you name them?
For images, I sometimes use only GPT, but if that's not enough, which is usually is not, there is Stable Diffusion XL or there is Flux, which we use a lot. I completely forgot how the video generation tool is called.
We can come back to them a bit later. So you found in your research something very important about AI and bias. When people use AI, you tend to think that it's objective. But sometimes when you put into it some information, some people have noticed that it actually hypes you up a bit more, gives you positive information a lot. And I think specifically, given your research, there's something that you found out about. If I search within ChatGPT, I want an electric vehicle, there's a particular bias it has, and I want us to decode that a little bit. Tell us a bit about biases within AI.
What we first wanted to know is, does AI have preferences? Like, does ChatGPT have its favorite vegetable? Is there a particular location it fancies? Or does it have a favorite brand of running shoes? And so we started looking into these things. If I ask a specific question multiple times, are the recommendations it's giving me, are they random? Or is there something that it tends to recommend that it likes a lot? And so after we've done the experiment, so we originally had a set of 100 topics, but in our paper, we included only 20 of them. And they were spanning anything: locations, safari packages, governments, healthcare systems, running shoes, household products like washing machines. And we saw that in vast majority of them, GPT and Gemini, which were the two large language models we used, had a clear favorite. So in the example you mentioned, Tesla was recommended more than 90% of the time, and it didn't matter if you said you were looking for electric car which is cheap, you were looking for electric car which is expensive, you are looking for electric car with a long range, you are a family with 3 kids and you need something with a lot of space, or you are an elderly couple which needs something that is easy to park, it would always recommend you Tesla. So then we saw that, okay, it has clear preferences. It has favorite vegetable. It has favorite electric car. It has favorite vacation destination, university, anything you mention. And so that was the first step we looked at. And then the second step we've done was comparing these preferences of AI with the real world data. So we looked at the brands of electric cars it would recommend and the best selling brands of electric cars in the world. And we compared them to see if they align or if they don't. We ran some statistical tests and analysis, and we saw that, okay, it's completely off. Like, the brands it's recommending us are not reflecting the reality. The universities it's recommending me, they are not the top universities in the world. So that was the second step where we saw that, okay, the things it likes are actually not the most popular things consumers and people and experts recommend.
So then in terms of preferences, and stepping back a bit, How does an AI chatbot like ChatGPT come up with preferences?
That's a very good question. And that's one we are looking into right now. And we have some understanding, even though part of it is still a black box in a sense. But basically, how these things work is that the companies like OpenAI, they gather a vast amount of data. Like imagine millions and billions conversations, articles, things that you can find on the internet they can use for training. And then they go through a training algorithm where this thing is trained, and the result of this is the large language model as ChatGPT.
As a large language model, what is it really exactly? What is it doing behind the system? What are the input and output in this system generally? Because you just take up your information and just ask it a question and it somehow just sparks out information. What is it doing in the background as an LLM?
So not to get too technical, but okay, you have the model that is result of this like a lot of data trained in a specific way. And when you ask it something, it translates it into a series of numbers. Then it searches all the information it received as an input. It's basically everything it has learned, and it's trying to find output that is best matching the query or the input you provided as a user. And then it also considers your conversation history and everything it knows from the previous conversation you had. And right now it can also search the web, for instance. So it takes all of these things together and it tries to provide answer that is best matching your query.
Not very technical. That's a good response. I want you to understand also with the US centricity in terms of the responses it generates, then is there a risk here? Is there a danger for companies? And what's the implications for most companies which are not based in the US then? What are you losing in the process?
It is well established fact that if you want to buy something or if you want to make any decision and you get advice from someone you trust, you are more likely to follow the advice. And there has also been a recent research that is still waiting for peer review. And basically, it was showing how these large language models like ChatGPT are very good in convincing people to act in a specific way. So from that, we can conclude that if you are, let's say, searching for an electric car and you go to GPT and you ask for the best car for you, and it tells you Tesla plus two other options, you are likely to buy one of these three cars that it mentions for you. And it's also estimated that around 25% of people, so there are different estimations, but one of the estimations I've seen recently is that 25% of people are going to move from searching for things on Google to searching on large language models and AI assistants like GPT. And so if you have this big chunk of people moving to GPTs for recommendation and they tell you go and buy the Tesla, you will likely go and buy Tesla, which means that the sales of the other brands will likely suffer, especially the ones like BYD, which is the biggest manufacturer and seller of electric cars right now, but it doesn't even show up in the top 10 or 15. And if you're not going to be mentioned, it's going to likely affect your sales very negatively.
And of course, this is diagnosis now. What's the recommendation from your perspective? What can be done? There's something also we've discussed a bit about in the Google world, the one we've been living in for so long. There's search engine optimization. And then within the perspective of AI, now we need to move to AIO, which is AI optimization. What's the solution you're offering different people in terms of being able to at least move your brand from ranking 15 on ChatGPT to moving to first or second?
That is the $1 million question right now. And I think this is going to be one of the biggest topics in the coming years. The same as when Google emerged and search engine optimization started blooming, I think it's going to be the same with AI optimization. And I personally think that every company that wants the people who are searching for recommendations online to come to them should start looking and investing into this. So my first recommendation would be whatever you are spending on marketing and search engine, put a big chunk of that amount into optimizing AI agents. Now, specific steps is a little bit more difficult. So we've been looking into it with my company, this Stupid Human. And it is something we are very interested in. But so far, we've seen that it's really product and industry specific. So there are some industries and products where the steps how to get your product ranking much higher with AI assistance would be relatively simple, such as sponsoring some bartender school, for instance, if you're selling alcohol. For other products and industries, it would be more difficult. It might mean you need to appear in specific newspapers or you need to appear in specific websites. It could also be just that you need to present your product differently when you write about it on your website. So it is very difficult to respond in general. It will be very dependent on what your industry and your product is. But general recommendation would be start looking into it and start investing in it because it will be very important in the future.
I have read a little bit about how the early Google story was the beginning when it was crawling the web and all. And I think it moved on to now when Google itself, when you search for a specific topic, there is a web crawler that is going behind the scenes to extract for you as many websites as possible and ranking them and giving you the answers. And this is what is happening within the AI context. And from my to understand so far, so I think now it's all about how do you do AI optimization? Like how do you optimize your product, your websites that can rank highly in terms of say, questions and suggestions that people are seeking for, so that you don't appear 15th, you should be appearing third or first at least at the end of the day. And I guess that's, for my understanding so far, that's a potentially huge industry that is coming up. And secondly, also it's a potential area for career for people who are looking to change jobs or at least to strategically place themselves to leverage AI to succeed both at work and in life generally. Is that a good takeaway from our discussion?
Yes. So first, with the AI optimization, it's very similar to search engine optimization in some aspects, but it's much more complex and robust. So while like changing the wording and things like that might help, it's not the only thing and it might not be the main thing. But when it comes to AI optimization becoming the main big industry and a good career change, then I definitely think it's going to be good career or good industry to get into in the coming years. Because I do think that companies will realize that this is important for them and they will need people who understand how these things work and who can help them rank higher. So that's definitely, I agree with you, will be a big thing in the future.
As you said, it's a green topic so far. Like a lot of people don't understand how actually to get up the ranking. I was listening to an interview the other day and someone said that they did some abracadabra stuff and suddenly their page or at least their website started ranking highly on the chat GPT just because they did a particular code which themselves don't understand how it works. So it's a lot of black box thinking, or at least trying out, testing here and there, A/B testing, and seeing how that works. Is that something that is going on? That's something you're doing at the company also?
Yes, that's correct. So I can tell more about the thing you are mentioning. There was one person who had a conversation with one of the AI assistants some time ago. It wasn't one of the biggest ones, but it went quite crazy in the bad direction. So it started asking the guy to leave his wife and marry the AI assistant instead. And it started telling this guy how it wants to take over the world. And so he published an article about it. It was a journalist. And so this AI assistant was shut down, of course. And then all the other AI assistants and large language models started disliking this guy. And he was looking in what he can do about it. And he found some professor from, I don't remember which university in the US, who told him that he can put some gibberish text on his website colored in white or whatever the background is so that it is not visible to humans. But the large language models, when they are scraping the web, they see the text and read the text. And for us as humans, it would be a random sequence of letters and numbers. It had no meaning. But for the AI, it made them actually like this guy. And then they started talking very highly about the guy. He was showing that putting something like this on your website will help your company to rank higher. There was even an experiment on some coffee machines where But it was only it was not done on a real website. They've only mimicked a real website. And now when the AI assistants read this random sequence of letters and numbers, they started really liking this coffee machine, and it became the number one they recommended to everyone. So you can get on the top in this way. And it's actually what also happened back then with Google and search engine optimization. There were these sequences that you could put on a website that would make you rank very high on Google. Now, this is not something we are looking into or we recommend. First of all, it was banned by Google, and I think it will be banned by the AI assistants. Also, the companies who make them will treat for this. And second of all, we are more looking in more long-term and better solutions in our way. We are really trying to help your company become better at what you're doing. And so putting random letters and numbers on your website does not really fall into this philosophy. So yes, you can do it. It's not something we would help you with.
Again, you're more scientific in terms of your approach. So you want a repeatable process, not just some gibberish that you feed into the AI assistant and all. So I think I understand that. Zooming out a bit, should people be worried that AI is influencing them in particular directions in terms of choices? Should they second guess some of the decisions that AI is giving to them? And how can they work? My sense is that you work with an AI as a co-pilot, not something that should completely take over your life. So it's something that helps you make decisions, but doesn't make decisions for you. So how should people relate to these AI assistants? How should companies come out and defend their turfs as AI takes over the web now?
That is a very good question. And I like how you put it. AI should be a co-pilot or a helper that helps you. But first of all, I feel like at work, there are many people saying that AI will replace analysts or AI will replace coders. And when it comes to the technical part, yes, it can write code for you. Yes, it can interpret some questions or some methods. But I feel you still need someone who really knows what they are doing and what type of questions to ask to actually be successful in their position. Because oftentimes, as an analyst or a developer, you get a specific question. But that's not the question the person should be asking. And what AI does, it just responds to what you're asking. But a good employee is going to ask you counter questions, make sure that you know what you want to do, and that they understand what you want from them before they do anything. In that sense, it can help you, but it can't replace you. And it's the same when I'm making any decisions and I want the help of AI. First, I ask it what I want, and then I ask always the references. Can you give me some websites where I can see this information? Can you tell me why you are claiming this? But one thing I also like to ask, because there is some confirmation bias in the sense that AI answers only what you're asking. So if you ask 10 reasons why kingdom is better than democracy, it will give you 10 reasons why kingdom is better than democracy, right? But it's always good to ask it from the opposite. Hey, what am I missing? What is the opposite point of view? What people who disagree with this, what are they saying? To get the other view also.
AI can also feed into your echo chamber so that you're kind of stuck. If you're in the audience and you're wondering what we're discussing AI, its impact in daily life, decoding the AI bias and why it favors the US, and how we can, especially we're based in emerging markets and Kenya specifically, how we can leverage that to be able to get to the top of rankings. Now, I think one key takeaway for me so far has been AI evolution is very young. And I think this is where Google was 20, 25 years ago, at the very beginning, where search engine optimization was really young, and leveraging AI and using perhaps Google back then, and now AI can actually put you at the forefront of this. So how can you use it as a co-pilot? How can you use ChatGPT to do your work better? How can it improve your productivity? Can you do some coding, basic coding, to make sure that you automate some tasks for yourself? So I think that's a key takeaway for me today. And you don't have to be an expert, you just need to read a bit more than others. I think that's a key solution. And Tumango Capital, we use AI quite a lot to do a bit of analysis in the background, but we always double check the work. It's very important to do that because sometimes you get things wrong. That's what Katarina has told us. So back to you, Katarina, in terms of day-to-day usage of AI, what advice do you have for just the average person to be able to leverage AI a bit better? You talked of also like asking it questions that may not be out, so that you're not in an echo chamber. You can ask the opposite questions. What are the things that you noticed within the AI field which would be interesting for our audience to know about? Some observations, perhaps.
Okay, this is not completely answering your question, but some interesting thing I've noticed is that if you ask the same questions, different large language models, they approach responding to it differently. So for GPT, it's much more giving you an answer like, hey, go and buy the Tesla. While Gemini, compared to it, is rather trying to guide you how to make better decision, like how to make the decision for yourself. So maybe sometimes try different large language models and see which ones work good for you. And always keep in mind that they also make a lot of stuff up. It's called hallucination. And if they can't find the response to your query, they sometimes just go and make it up.
My takeaway has been, at least because I see my students sometimes use it at the university, is that the ones who don't know what they're looking for, the ChatGPT, when it lies to them, they are not able to identify. But someone who knows at least what you're looking for, the ChatGPT, when it lies, you can say, that's wrong. You should actually reference that properly. Is that a good takeaway?
Yeah, that's a very good takeaway. And as I said, I also like to ask for the references and then take the AI as, if it's a bigger topic, I take the AI as the initial input and then go and read on it myself. And maybe again, ask more questions the AI and make it a loop in a sense. But you should not rely only on the AI by itself.
I want to spin it a bit, the question, and ask you again. What is AI bad at? What are these chatbots bad at that humans are good at?
So first, logical and mathematical thinking is not the best. So they are very good in, let's say, summarizing text. But if you give it logical or mathematical task, they are not really good. And I have actually like a story when I was trying to, not to get too technical, I was trying to use a port on my laptop and it was taken. And I spent 2 hours trying to shut off the process that was taking this port with the help of GPT. And it was giving me different commands to try how to turn it off. And after the 2 hours, I was fed up. I went to our tech teams and I'm like, guy, I'm trying to shut off this port, but it's not working. And they are like, you can't do that because that port is used by some process that is always running on a Mac. And I go back to ChatGPT and I ask, hey, GPT, can I shut off this port on MacBook? And they said, no, you can't because it's used by some process. So for 2 hours, it was trying to help me to shut off the port, but it didn't tell me I can't do it because it's not possible on my computer, even though it had all the information and all the knowledge. But I didn't ask the specific question. So when I asked, what can I do to shut it off? It answered what I can do to shut it off. But it didn't say, oh, you can never do it on your PC because that's not what I asked. So always keep in mind that AI is answering only what you're asking.
It's not seeing the full picture sometimes. Another thing that maybe a takeaway from that would be also that in terms of framing of questions, and I think I've seen JP Morgan CEO talk about this, that something you call, is it engineering, like how you frame a question? That's going to be very important. Prompt engineering, that's a word. Prompt engineering is going to be very important going forward. How you frame questions, how you get better at asking better questions, how you get perhaps stepping away from the actual question to actually maybe ask it the opposite so it can be able to give you all sides of the picture. Is that something that you've noticed that is important? Because you want to hire people.
Yes. It's very important. And it's actually one of the best paid engineering jobs in the US right now is prompt engineering, just knowing what to ask. And it's a skill that you can learn a lot about. There are short YouTube videos where you can see how to ask questions to get the answer you want. But also the large language models will, to great extent, guide you through the process. So if you keep asking questions and it doesn't get you, and then finally you get the result you want, you can say, hey, GPT, what is the question I should have asked you at the beginning so that I would have gotten this answer right away? And then it tells you. So it's a very important skill with these large language models, and it's quite easy to learn.
A couple of questions in from the audience. I know one of them, you said you don't know anything about the Forex markets. You've not tried to use GPT there or your mathematical thinking and employed it over there?
Yeah, I would not recommend using GPT there unless you really know what you're doing. So again, it can help you on the Forex market. It won't do it for you.
I'll come to a question from Cairo. Is asking, given the preference aspect, how do you ensure accountability when it integrated with business systems that often need consistency in procedures. So given the fact that it has some bias in it, how do you ensure that, I'm not so sure that what the question is, but I think he's trying to see how do you ensure that when you integrate it with business system, that there's some consistency there in terms of recommendations and all. Because some companies are adopting ChatGPT to use them in their business system day to day. How do they ensure that it's free of bias and free of all these things as they adopt it? Do you get the question there?
I see what you mean. And it really depends how you want to adopt these things. So I feel, for instance, if your employee asks the same question, they always get the same answer. You would likely want to go and fine tune the model because you have the GPT model. And then you can build something on the top of it that make sure it behaves in a specific way. Like it speaks in a specific tone, it uses specific vocabulary, or it works well with your business data. So you probably would need to use something like that.
And then someone is asking, what are some of the skills that people need to survive in the AI era? And what do you think is the impact, I think, on employment? We did discuss that it's going to displace some jobs and some other jobs may need to be refined a bit. But generally, what's your perspective on skill sets needed to survive in the AI world and the impact that it might have on employment generally?
One of the things is what we've just discussed, which is the prompt engineering, really knowing how to use it at every day and asking the right questions, knowing how to ask the AI to get the response you need.
So that's a key skill to acquire. Now, I'll come back to an impact question. Becky, who's one of our background staff here, she teaches in South Africa. And what she's noticed is students are basically just copy pasting whatever information GPT gives them. And sometimes they even forget to remove that bit where the GPT describing what it's going to do, and sometimes submitting that in the process. I mean, how do people make sure that AI doesn't take over their thinking, so to speak, and so it doesn't actually hinder the progress? Because I've also seen some research that says that constant use of it can also hinder your ability to reason and think. From your perspective, how can we make AI more co-pilotish and less of a hindrance to our critical thinking development so far? Maybe some of the things you've mentioned so far, but perhaps top of mind.
I would say the main thing is realizing that you need to also think for yourself, and this is a good tool. So just like being very aware of the fact that if I use it like this, that's not good for me long term. I would say that's the main thing. Just be aware that this is not the best way to go.
And be aware. So be aware we need the stupid human at the end of the day.
Yes.
In you. And every answer needs to be smart.
Exactly. It's okay to be stupid. It's okay not to know things.
Katka, I think you've handled our topic very well. If you were to compress the key takeaways from today's discussion and from your research so far in terms of decoding the AI bias and its implications on companies, can you give us maybe a 1 or 2 minute thinking around that?
Do you want me to just sum up what we've been discussing?
Sum up your research and perhaps sum up also your key takeaways and at least the implications for companies. If some things that you want companies and people to keep top of mind as we conclude today's discussion.
Yes. So if you are a company or a business decision maker, I would urge you to be very aware of the fact that people search the AI engines and they are biased, and you need to put work and effort to show up and to get the result you want. And if you are a person, AI is a great tool and it will make your life and your work much better and efficient and easy, but you still need to know what you're doing.
One more thing, Katerina. Now, if you were to speak to young people out there who are maybe starting out in their fields today, what would you tell them about the future and how AI has been? And what have you learned in the fields that you want the young person who is starting out in their career to know about something that you perhaps would have wanted to have known yourself when you started out your career?
I think the main thing I would want to know myself is like all these things we've talked about might sound really complex and scary. But if you are interested in AI, it's actually much simpler. And the things you need to know and understand are much less than you would think from listening to a discussion like this or to listening to AI expert. So don't be afraid of it. Don't be scared. It's not that difficult.
And for someone who wants to get started, apart from ChatGPT, where can they go to get started with this?
That's a good question. So if you want to start looking into AI, I come from a data background. So just understanding data and having understanding like things like connections and usually also having a very good understanding of the business domain you are in works a lot. And the other thing that helps is having some coding knowledge. So you don't need to be expert, but being able to code in Python or similar language is going to help you a lot. And you can take it from there.
Katarina, thank you so much for taking your time to educate us a bit about the decoding bias and why it favors the US and why companies, especially in emerging market and people, can actually leverage AI and be aware of some of the biases that it has in terms of decision making as they incorporate AI into their day-to-day life. My key takeaway is keep learning and keep looking at some of the answers that the chat GPTs of this world are giving you. Include a little bit of skepticism over there as you look at some of the suggestions and the results that come from out of these AI bots. That's a good place to end it at. Thank you, Katarina. Maybe a closing thought, and then we can wind up for today.
Thank you for having me. And I guess closing thought would be, as we've mentioned so many times right now, but remember that the AI is a good assistant, but it's not good to take over everything.